Just a few days ago, the 2024 Oscars happened, but before that, I was in the middle of finalizing my script for this video, and a comedically relevant incident showed up on my timeline. Multiple studios with nominated films complained to the Academy about allowing Messi, the dog in Anatomy of a Fall, to attend the Oscar nominees' luncheon event. He will not be attending the Oscars ceremony. Not everyone is said to have been pleased with Messi's attendance. After all, being a dog, he was not technically a nominee. Multiple companies with nominated films complained to the Academy that allowing him to attend the event gave Anatomy of a Fall an advantage during the voting window, according to a source with knowledge of the complaints. And as you can see, Twitter instantly set to demanding justice for Messi. So the film was nominated and the dog was in a pivotal acting scene, but can't come for not being human? Oh, they're scared he'll get all the attention. Scared of a real movie star. Luckily, when the award show actually did roll around, Messi the dog was in fact in attendance, much to the world's delight. Unless you're the people on r/dogfree on Reddit who are really mad about the situation. Well, this whole Messi issue is not really a new one. As Edward Edelson wrote in the 1980s book Great Animals of the Movies, actors hate animals. Audiences love animals. Those two facts are directly related. Actors don't like animals because almost any animal can steal a scene from even the best actors simply by making an appearance. Just bring a puppy or a horse or an elephant onto a stage, and all the human stars immediately become bit players. If the animal can do a trick or two, the human actors might as well go home. Speaking of stealing the show, look who's being a little troublemaker on set today. Oh my god. Do you have anything to say for yourself? Will you behave? Years ago, when MGM was still the top Hollywood powerhouse, filmgoers could expect to sit down at the theater, popcorn in hand, and be led into the world of cinema with the loud roar of a lion. Of course, there was not just one MGM lion. There were many over the course of the studio's history, and he could easily be considered one of the earliest non-human Hollywood stars. In 1916, when Samuel Goldwyn ditched Lasky and Zukor to form Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, he wanted an intro that would be so visibly loud that the audience could hear it even from a silent screen. The first of many MGM lions to play Leo was Slats, who hailed from LA's own Gay's Animal Farm, which I talked about briefly in my video about LA's ostrich farms. The MGM lion perfectly set the incoming scene. What you are about to see is a powerful work of art, and odds are, an animal will help carry it. Animals were and still are not only props in Hollywood. Since before the dawn of moving pictures, we've had animal celebrities whose names were just as famous as their talking counterparts. Some of film's earliest ancestors were animal-focused, like 1897's Horse Eating Hay, and the silent era birthed the first animal actors that became household names. The 20s saw the immense popularity of dogs like Rin Tin Tin, who had his own chef, valet, fan clubs, fan mail, and even a limo. Much deserved, too, since his popularity is exactly what saved Warner Brothers from early bankruptcy. Later came other famous animals like Pal, the most popular of the 9 collies who played Lassie, or Flipper the dolphin. Some animals round out a film in the perfect way, like Terry, who played Toto in The Wizard of Oz, the monkey in Night at the Museum, or the leopard in Bringing Up Baby.
Just think of him as being a house cat, David.
Well, I don't like cats either.
Some animals make the film. Joey the horse in Warhorse, Air Bud, the large northwestern wolves in this really obscure nature documentary you probably haven't heard of. But as long as there have been movies, there have been animal stars, and their lives are much wilder than you'd think. Come learn with me. But first, new month, new channel charity. This month I'd like to spotlight Stray Cat Alliance, an organization working to rescue and care for feral and stray cats in Los Angeles. They work on getting bottle feeding support for unweaned kittens, trap-neuter return processes for feral cats, and health and rescue support for all cats who need help to prevent the unneeded loss of life. My friend Skylar has personally worked with them as a foster, and I have numerous friends who have gotten cats through them, and they do great and very important work. In honor of Hollywood's animal stars, and the fact that my baby Mila is a former stray cat herself, I think it's a great thing to help the animals in Los Angeles that need help right now, and this is a great way to do it. I've made a donation this month, and if you have the means, I encourage you to do the same. So now let's get into it, but first, let's hear a quick word from today's sponsor, Aura. These days, you literally have no idea just how much your personal data is floating around out there, easily accessible to any nefarious scoundrel looking to mess with you. When I looked at my name and email address before using Aura, I was shocked at just how much of my personal information was so easily accessible, and frankly, it was very disturbing, and I was so uncomfortable and knew I needed to do something about it. Data brokers sell your information to scammers, spammers, and basically anybody with Wi-Fi, giving them full and cheap access to your full name, email, home address, phone number, health records, your relatives, everything. That's why I'm so glad that I've been using Aura, which shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me, which saves me a ton of time and grief. Plus, they can keep an eye on your credit score and have a nifty credit lock tool so that people can't be putting hard checks on your credit all willy-nilly. Since getting my info cleaned out, I've gotten a lot less spam, and it protects me from hackers who could use this information to get into my social media accounts, bank accounts, and more. You also get other features like antivirus, VPN, password management, identity theft insurance, and more without having to download several different apps. It's all easily manageable and intuitive, all in one spot for a very affordable price. With Aura's all-encompassing protection, you can rest assured that you're protected on all ends of the interweb experience and save yourself some future grief by getting your personal information away from prying eyes. I value my privacy and I value yours, so you can go to aura.com/Kazro to start your 2-week free trial, which is also linked below in the description. Thank you so much to Aura for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back to learning about the animal stars of Hollywood. So here's a new vocab word for you. Speciesism. I know, sounds like a weird one, but it pops up quite a bit in literature, believe me. Speciesism is basically the belief that non-human species have no value outside of how they may serve human interests, or the failure to accord non-human species with respect. Tony Kashani writes in his essay, Hollywood's Exploited, René Descartes called non-human animals nature's machines, incapable of feeling pain, pleasure, and actually being without consciousness. In a Cartesian paradigm, a dog has no consciousness, and the noises he may make when a person steps on his tail are mechanical. For so long, this was the orthodoxy, dictating that non-human animals could not feel or even think, given that they do not have a language like ours. Of course, anyone can tell you that's bullshit. Even despite the human tendency to anthropomorphize animal emotions, it's obvious that animals have a very distinct language, emotions, feelings, and thoughts. Maybe not obvious enough, though, because the general belief that all animals are inherently stupid persisted heavily for centuries. Yet, at the same time, animals still held great societal importance in various ways, especially to aristocracy. John Blowett writes in The Genealogy of Animal Celebrity, the widespread adoption of pets in later times, domesticated dogs, were ascribed a status somewhere between animal and human. Hunting dogs were frequently treated better by these aristocrats than their tenants, and in ancient Rome were even crowned during the festival of Diana. The renowned anthropologist Sir James Frazer discussed in detail how in numerous cultures, human woes could be transferred to animals and banished. Animals have frequently been used as symbols, icons, totems, and mascots. One good example of an early animal star was the London Zoo's Jumbo the elephant, born in 1860. He was advertised as the largest animal in the world, always coupled with a tragic backstory and the reassurance that Jumbo had humanesque displays of affection. This narrative surrounding Jumbo, as if he were the main character in a drama, drew thousands of visitors to the zoo to see him. But Jumbo, for a variety of reasons, had grave anger issues and outbursts, and he was eventually sold to circus man P.T. Barnum for what was then a fortune. In the Barnum Circus's care, Jumbo became even more of a celebrity phenomenon. He was the subject of short stories and books, advertisements, merchandise, You name it. Jumbo passed away in 1885 when he was hit by a freight train while being led away from a show in Ontario. Before his body could even be moved, circus goers descended on him like vultures, slicing off parts of him as souvenirs. And even then, Barnum had Jumbo's body taxidermied and displayed next to his very much alive widow, Alice. It's a disturbing trend that would persist for the next century and beyond, and truthfully, the spectacle of celebrity death being corrupted into a craving for death souvenirs is a deeply ancient one. Think back to the guillotine beheadings of the Middle Ages through the French Revolution, the wild clamor of the spectators to take the head once it was severed, or at least capture some of the body's blood in a bottle. In the Victorian era, it wasn't unheard of for famous criminals to be embalmed and their bodies sent on tour around the country for all to see. One criminal in particular, dubbed Big Nose George, was preserved and his skin turned into leather for shoes. Gross. I know. But my point is, people's attitude towards animals was similar and intrinsically connected to their attitude towards death and celebrity. It's all a big circle of various flavors of dehumanization or objectification. Animals were and still are humanized and anthropomorphized for the benefit of our entertainment, so of course in death, we treat them just as poorly as our human celebrities. As David C. Giles writes in Celebrity Studies, somewhat controversially, celebrity animals literally do nothing but act as a conduit for our fantasies and desires. The changing attitude towards animals in American society came coupled with the rise of the Industrial Revolution, as many philosophers and social critics of the 19th century began to try and differentiate modern society from that of the unenlightened past, based around how that society treats, or, at the bare minimum, thinks about animals. Various animals, even outside of cats and dogs, were not only kept increasingly as pets indoors, but seen as genuine family members. Animal rights groups began to take shape, and grand philosophical questions surrounding animal intelligence and communication then followed. As Jeremy Bentham wrote in 1976, the question is not, can they reason, can they talk? But can they suffer? Of course, the rise of the intelligent animal means that more than ever people were interested in the animal as entertainment. Of course, this is nothing new, not in the slightest. Circuses involving animals had existed for centuries, and even in ancient times you had certain types of animal theater. But the later Victorian and Edwardian eras, with the increasingly popular vaudeville industry, saw an even larger growth of interest in the humanized animal, or the animal as actor. Of course, the two main pre-cinema places that an animal actor would be is either in the circus or vaudeville. Both are similar in that they involved animals being trained to perform tricks or certain performances. In fact, the differences are actually very slim. Circuses happened in a tent, vaudeville happened in a theater. Circuses involved more oddities, vaudeville involved more skits. But there was quite a lot of overlap, like so much so that the Venn diagram is quite nearly a circle. Frequently, the animal actors in vaudeville weren't named, but some were billed as their own individual spectacle, and so when film came around, audiences were already primed to be interested in seeing animals in acting parts or in extreme situations, and they were more than eager to accept animals into the cultural lexicon of household name stars. The first animal actor that we could really call a star was Gene, a naturally talented collie who signed with the Vitagraph Studios company in 1912. Of course, dogs are one of the most beloved animals in America, so it's not surprising that they came to dominate the silver screen. It was for a deliberate subconscious reason, too. In 1940, J. Allen Boone published Letters to Strongheart being one of the most famous dog actors of the 20s. Boone wrote that these dog stars set a good moral example for human viewers to return to the values of simplicity, goodness, and happiness, as Jonathan Burt paraphrases in his book Animals in Film. Dogs ought to be teaching human moviegoers about good morals. Burt writes, "Thus the dog as a strip of film embodies the moral potential of film itself. Strongheart does not just stand for a better world, but is the medium by which it is made manifest." Strongheart being singled out here is absolutely definitely not random. Strongheart, predating Rin Tin Tin, was one of the earliest movie stars. His debut was in 1921's The Silent Call, the story of a dog who saves a girl, murders her attacker, and helps her and some guy fall in love. Strongheart and his astonishing acting talents went on to star in Brawn of the North and White Fang, captivating international audiences. Rin Tin Tin, who was also a German Shepherd, would carry Strongheart's torch and would gain even greater acclaim. As with all silent movie stars, Rin Tin Tin came from humble beginnings. He was discovered in 1918 by Corporal Lee Duncan, who came across the ruins of a German dugout where a starving dog and her puppies were cowering in fear. Of course, Duncan took the family in, and when the war ended, Duncan took 2 of the puppies home to the US, Rin Tin Tin and his sister Nanette. Tragically, Nanette didn't survive the journey, but Rin Tin Tin persisted. He was later hired by Warner Brothers, starring in hits like Clash of Wolves and The Manhunter. He could perform an incredible array of stunts and had a very human-like demeanor, earning him the nickname the Mortgage Lifter, because any movie he was in was a guaranteed success. Following the success of Rinty, the only dogs that could come close to his stardom have to be Benji or Lassie. Lassie was played by a collie named Pal, who carried the Lassie role through a wide number of Lassie pictures, and even a radio show, which was frankly just a combination of dog noises. But Pal received the star treatment both on and off set and even got fan mail. One was from a Dalmatian named Togo, who had a pin-up photo of Lassie hanging in his kennel. Raymond Lee writes, "Obviously Togo didn't know the ways of Hollywood and that Lassie was male." I disagree, Raymond. I think Togo might have been a gay Dalmatian. Is that a problem with you? Well, the Hollywood dogs obviously were proof that animals made guaranteed money, and this kicked off a ravenous craving for animal-centric pictures, which of course nurtured the growing industry of exotic animal trainers. One of early Hollywood's greatest menageries was owned by slapstick king Mack Sennett, who supplies a massive number of wild and domesticated animals for film, especially for comedy. One of Sennett's dogs, Cameo, could smoke cigars and drink gin, a bit that has persisted in the cultural lexicon ever since. Sennett's favorite players were Pepper the cat, Teddy the Great Dane, Friedrich Wilhelm the mouse, Carrie Nation, quote, a chicken of dubious origin, and Anime the elephant. Or, if people wanted a bigger thrill, there was a gaggle of lions, rattlesnakes, and bears. But Pepper the cat was his favorite, and he refused to sell her at all costs. She could complete a scene in one take as if she could read directions telepathically. According to Hollywood legend, Pepper and Teddy the Great Dane were extremely close friends, and when Teddy tragically died at 12 years old, Pepper was overcome with grief and refused to perform again. One day she simply disappeared, and the whole of Sennett's slapstick studio mourned. They declared to never have another feline star again, because no other cat could possibly measure up to Pepper. It's easy to see why Pepper loved Teddy so much though, because everyone did. Teddy had the uncanny ability to act like a human. One scene showed him opening a kitchen door, turning on a stove with a match, filling a kettle at the sink, putting it on the stove, and then sweeping the floor with a broom. And Teddy had a man's temper too. He'd randomly play dead on set when perturbed, and only Mack Sennett could bring him out of his depression. That is, unless Harry Langdon would play him some jazz. Teddy wasn't the only animal in Sennett's menagerie who had humanitis. Josephine the monkey was said to have an IQ of over 140. She played pool, golf, she could drive, she wore luxurious ladies' gowns, and had the manners to match. Sennett's menagerie didn't start the movie craze for animals, but it certainly inflamed it, and everyone, both in and out of the industry, wanted to be a part of it. As Raymond Lee writes in Not So Dumb, the movie industry's demand for animal actors had people pulling their laying hens off their nests, butting goats from their milking, parrots from their perches. When their pet cages and backyards were empty, they took to beating the brush in the Hollywood Hills. Mr. and Mrs. Orville Rounds sent their 2 girls through college by renting out their trained skunk. 2 young Englishmen with imagination opened the famous Pet Exchange and boasted they could fill any movie need from any part of the world. Their business card read, anything from a bee to an elephant. Taking advantage of the public's early ignorance, one animal casting director named Jack Allman scouted animal stars with this brutally bizarre ad copy. Don't feel sorry for the animals you see on screen. Hollywood is kinder to dumb creatures than to humans. Who knows? You may have a duck worth a fortune or a pet mouse that could be a star. Call for an interview and bring anything that's alive and doesn't talk. Absolutely no actors wearing animal costumes wanted. We sell only the real rats. To be fair, the guy had a really hard job. He had to hunt for the strangest of animal stars. One film necessitated a close-up of a wood tick on actor Lloyd Hughes' neck, forcing Allman to go around a bunch of SoCal barns asking to poke around their livestock looking for ticks to cast in the role. This wouldn't be the last time Allman would be forced to go bug or even bat hunting by himself for the sake of a movie. These early years weren't exactly clear on animal training or safety standards yet, though. One incident saw Vitagraph fencing off a field in rural New Jersey to film a scene where animals escape a circus train, and one of the lepers actually did manage to escape and moseyed on down to the local barbershop, not for a trim, but to attack a terrified customer by clawing at his pants. The man sued Vitagraph, claiming that the fear had made his hair turn white and fall out completely, leaving him bald, and ended up winning $3,000, which was nothing to sniff at in those days. But this incident was definitely an outlier. Most deadly or near-deadly incidents happened on set. Eager trainers who had more often than not been taught to train animals using the fear method were bringing confused and traumatized African wildlife on set with frightened actors. More than once, a lion or tiger or bear would seem perfectly docile during a scene only to suddenly launch an attack on a cast member or, more often, the trainer himself, usually resulting in either the death of either the animal or the human or both. Of course, that didn't stop the studios from using wild animals in their films. Notable racist D.W. Griffith was very attached to his animal stars, from Leo the lion to Susie the chicken. Susie was something of a media darling. In one interview, Griffith regaled the wondrous chicken lore. Susie is a Plymouth Rock from a village near Berlin. Fate let her wander into a scene I was shooting near a humble homestead. From the minute I saw her, I knew she wasn't an ordinary hen. Friendly and intelligent, she recognized me as a man of authority. At the slightest encouragement, she would throw back her head and sing lustily. Then he stroked Susie's neck, whispered something in German, and Susie threw back her head and belted out a high C any prima donna would have been proud of. But a special place in Hollywood history must be saved for the horses. Above all other animals, horses have carried the movie and TV industry as strongly as anyone. After all, one of the earliest moving film images featured a horse, Edward Muybridge's The Horse in Motion from 1878. Then, in 1894, Thomas Edison opened his New York kinetoscope parlor, featuring a short clip of a horse named Sunfish in Bucking Bronco. And the trend continued 2 years later with 1896's The Burning Stable, featuring 4 white horses escaping from a burning stable. Obviously. And of course, 1903 saw the release of The Great Train Robbery, the first official feature film. At 12 minutes long, The Great Train Robbery is one of the first films to show horses in a recognizably acting role, and set off the eternal cornerstone of film, chase scenes. Of course, where would westerns be without horses? It's no wonder that so many early westerns employed real cowboys and their own horses, like Jack Montgomery and his horse Chapo. The turn of the century through the 20s was still the era of the true Old West. slowly disappearing as it was, and so when studios went to places like California or Nevada or Arizona to shoot, it was easy for them to hire local cowboys on a day's salary to ride in some shots. And some of these cowboys went on to become regulars in Hollywood pictures, and many actors who would become screen cowboys, like William Hart, would develop incredibly close bonds with their screen horses. Tom Mix, a real cowboy and widely considered one of cinema's greatest horsemen, was primarily attached to two horses named Old Blue and Tony, who had wildly different personalities but were both equally excellent equine actors. Tony even has his hoofprint immortalized at Grauman's Chinese Theater in Los Angeles alongside the other human cinema greats. It's no wonder that, unlike many other animals, the early cinema horses were so beloved and often well cared for, given that their riders bonded with them so strongly or were horsemen themselves. This trend persists even to modern day, like when Brendan Fraser adopted his horse Picus from the production of the 2015 series Texas Rising, or when Viggo Mortensen adopted 3 horses from the set of Lord of the Rings. And these famous screen duos became popular marketing gimmicks for studios too, often resulting in dozens of duo films. One of the most popular Western pairs was Roy Rogers and his horse, Trigger, the smartest horse in movies. Trigger had already gotten his screen debut in 1938's The Adventures of Robin Hood, starring Olivia de Havilland, under the name Golden Cloud. Rogers and his co-star Smiley Burnett renamed him Trigger as it seemed a more fitting name for a cowboy's heroic steed. Smiley said, "As fast and quick as the horse is, you ought to call him Trigger. You know, quick on the trigger." They reenacted this rechristening of the horse in the 1946 film My Pal Trigger, which is a hilariously near-meta sort of lore vehicle. Rogers and Trigger made the jump from movies to TV together with The Roy Rogers Show in 1951, which lasted an impressive 100 episodes and led to a massive collection of toy collectibles. Legendary Trigger passed away in 1964 at 33 years old, and Rogers made the questionable decision to have him taxidermied, much like Jumbo, and placed in the Roy Rogers Dale Evans Museum, which closed down in 2003-ish. I was curious what happened to Trigger, so I looked it up, and it looks like he got auctioned off by Christie's for about $266,500 in 2010, sold to RFD-TV for their plans to start a Western museum, which did not happen. But in 2019, RFD-TV moved Trigger and his buddy Bullet to Fort Worth to live at the Cowboy Channel Studios, and now, at long last, they can finally be seen at the John Wayne Experience gift shop. Other horses were less suited for Wild West life though, and ended up becoming comic celebrities. One of the most famous was Mr. Ed, the talking horse with a dry sense of humor who constantly embarrasses the bumbling architect Wilbur Post, played by Alan Young.
I just don't understand it.
Don't try to. It's bigger than both of them.
Mr. Ed can talk like a human, but only does it in front of Wilbur, resulting in zany situations. Like his predecessor, Francis the Talking Mule, the illusion of Ed talking was created by fitting a thin string under his lip, and then lifting it to give the illusion of talking. Not all horse actors needed this artificial tool, though. Don, the horse star of 1988's Hot to Trot, was successfully trained to make talking movements on his own. Things weren't always good for horse actors, though, especially the ones unfortunate enough to be extras rather than the big name on the marquee. Many horses were tricked into their various stunts, like stumbling into purposely dug pits to make them fall as if shot. Some horses were hooked up to what was called the running W system, which attached weighted wires to their forelegs and caused them to fall when they ran to the end of the wire. The running W equipment constantly broke horses' legs, or worse, killed them. Another just evil contraption was the tilt chute, a huge chute that was either hidden by a curtain or the horse was blindfolded, with the chute itself covered in grease, causing the horse to slip and go flying off a cliff, and if a horse sensed the danger, they'd often be fitted with blinders so they couldn't see it coming. Of course, As passionate as the human stars were about the animals, actors like Errol Flynn and Jack Montgomery were outspoken about the dangers and horror of the running W's and tilt shoots, and the American Humane Association, at the prompting of a furious public, began working to ban these types of stunts. In the 90s to 2000s, before CGI became convincing enough to relinquish the necessity of stunt horses altogether, some horse stunts were performed by highly convincing animatronics, like Brock the Robo-Horse in 2001's The Patriot. Thankfully, Brock took the impalement rather than a real horse, but the same can't be said for the silent era's tragic beasts. Of course, life as a TV horse was no easier than the movies. The popularity of Bonanza, which ran from 1959 to 1973, led to a horrific incident in 1964 when some freaks broke into the stable and attacked the show's horses. Many were badly injured, and Pernell Roberts' horse was so badly hurt that it needed to be put down. The mystery of who the criminals even were was never solved, but I like to think that at some point in time they were either trampled by a stampede or haunted by nightmares filled with ghost horses that drove them to sleepwalk into a tilt chute. Or at least to madness, either one. But I would be remiss to not touch on one of my personal favorite films, War Horse, a 2011 Spielberg film. I think this film has a massive connection to the very history of Hollywood horses. Thematically speaking, at least. Throughout the history of war and cinema, horses have always played a pivotal and underappreciated role, usually at the cost of their lives. Joey in War Horse is taken from his sunny pastoral youth into the gray, frightening world of World War I. It's one of the few stories we have where we can witness the struggle from a horse's perspective, in a way posthumously giving thousands of horses a voice years after they played their parts. Mercifully, 9 different horses played Joey in the movie, sparing any one horse from having to deal too vividly with the horrors of war and Hollywood, even in a simulated sense. And even more thankfully, an animatronic horse was used for the scene where Joey gets caught in barbed wire in No Man's Land. Spielberg himself said, "The thing I kept emphasizing from the very outset was that the horses have to be safe. I love horses, and even though there's a lot of violence in the picture directed towards horses, and man, I didn't want any of the horses to be in harm's way. I gave AHA rep Barter Carr the chance to stop a take, or even stop a take from ever being taken. Things aren't easy still, not even arguably fair to animal actors, but it's undeniable that they've come a long, long way." Fittingly, when Lee Marvin accepted his Oscar for Best Actor in 1965's Cat Ballou, he said,
I think, though, that half of this belongs to a horse someplace out in the back.
In 2011, The Artist was released by Warner Brothers to incredible acclaim. Intended as a homage to the style and legacy of the silent era, the movie is not only a black and white silent film, but tells the story of a silent star's struggle to adapt to the changing industry as the talkies enter the picture, and he clings to his former success. The Artist went on to earn praise at the Oscars and from critics, but ended up being somewhat polarizing with audiences in a similar way that La La Land did. People complained that it was basically a Hollywood circle jerk, but heads up everybody, I'm a The Artist apologist, so hear me out. Probably because I'm a lover of the silent era and it reminds me of Singin' in the Rain a little bit, and maybe because it features niche LA locations that I know and love, and maybe it's because it stars Jean Dujardin, an actor that I was only previously familiar with because in high school I took French class and our teacher made us watch Brice de Nice, which he is in, and which is basically the French incarnation of Wayne's World, but no, none of that matters. The Artist is a poignant homage to silent era dog stars because the film is absolutely dominated by the majestic performance of my king, Uggie the dog. God rest his soul. Uggie's role in the film is like a combination of Lassie and Charlie Chaplin's dog Scraps. He's comedic relief and a brave rescuer of our hero, and much like Messi the dog this year, and all of the dog stars before both of them, Uggie became a great source of human paranoia because he continually stole the show from his bipedal counterparts. Blue Bloods actor Tom Selleck dissed Uggie because he thought that Joe the Golden Retriever was better, or a more serious actor. Hey, why are we pitting two bad bitches against each other? Uggie also created a lot of discourse over the fact that he was continually stealing the show at the Oscars. Sound familiar? People began to debate, does a dog deserve an Oscar? And when Uggie passed away, why was he not included in the Oscars in Memoriam slideshow when he was such a big name and so beloved? Because he's a dog, he doesn't get to be included? But I think the situation with Uggie unearthed a lot of questions for people that they had always had deep down. Questions both new and very, very old. Why don't we honor the animals who make our movies possible, especially the ones in starring roles? Why are they seen as a threat? Jokes aside, I actually do find it really pathetic that people feel so threatened by a dog, enough so to ban them from award ceremonies for their literal job. You can argue all day long that, oh, it doesn't matter, they're just animals, they don't know they're being excluded, they don't care, they're better off at home. Well, that's actually not even really the point. I don't actually care if a dog attends the Oscars or not. It's the human mentality that I'm arguing about, the deliberate choice to ignore and exclude animal actors. They should get their flowers too, in whatever form that may take, and not be barred out of things because of someone's ego. Maybe that's a stupid thing to have a strong opinion about, but if these animals are putting in the time to get in front of the camera for our entertainment and bring us smiles, laughs, and tears, the least we can do is honor them accordingly. Thank you for learning with me about the animal celebrities of yesteryear. Do you have a favorite animal star? Did you grow up with any of the ones that we talked about today? Let me know in the comments below. Side note, I just wanted to remind everyone that you can go order my graphic novel, Liberated, The Radical Art and Life of Claude Cahun. I wrote, researched, and drew the whole thing myself, and I know you will love it. Seriously, wow, look at this art, it's so good. Look at this amazing nonfiction story. It's a graphic novel, so you don't even have to read that much. And it's also a quick read if you don't have time to read. Liberated actually had such a great week a couple weeks ago, winning basically 2 awards, so you better get in on this, you're missing out. It's available pretty much wherever books are sold, especially on the Getty website, and if you've read it, definitely leave a review on Amazon or places like that. So yes, until next time, wash thy hands, wear thy mask, and